following is a presentation of the Women's Football Alliance.
Champions fell and parity is growing on the road to Canton. Welcome to the Road to Canton. I'm your host, Brian Sweeney, the voice of the Women's Football Alliance Pro Division National Championship game. With me, as always, is Alex Wested, and this last weekend, we saw a 5-year winning streak come to an end, and the division-leading offense continue to add points to their totals. Let's look at the Week 4 scores and highlights. The Mile High Blaze fell for the first time this season when they lost 30-0 to the OKC Lady Force. Look for the Blaze to bounce back when these two teams meet again in 2 weeks. The DC Divas were victorious over the previously undefeated Baltimore Nighthawks 41-6. This was the Divas' best showing on defense this season, and for Baltimore, this was the first game they've allowed points to be scored. The Tampa Bay Inferno fell again, this time to the Palm Beach Coyotes. Final score 28-6. These two teams will meet again next week. And the Minnesota Vixen increased their league-leading points to 159 by handing the Iowa Phoenix an identical score to their last meeting in 2022, 55-0. And in the pro versus pro games, the Houston Energy showed that they belong in the playoff talks by beating the Dallas Elite Mustangs 41-22. The Cali War moved to 3 straight wins over the Nevada Storm, 58-30. These teams will meet again, with the result ultimately deciding who makes the postseason. And in the first of the games of the week, in a rematch of the 2023 championship, the undefeated teams of the Renegades and the Slam met in St. Louis. In the end, the Slam were victorious 36-27 and gave Boston their first loss in 2,191 days. Alex, we sat here a week ago and said that both of these teams would be held to under 40 points. You and I also stated off-air that St. Louis would win this game. We can show that clip now.
Yeah. Anyway.
No, I honestly think St. Louis could win this game.
Oh, they totally could. 1,000%.
And if Vegas let me put money on it, I would.
Oh, so would I. So would I. Underdog Fantasy is the official favorite.
You heard it. We both have Boston, or St. Louis to beat Boston.
All right.
I mean, especially at home, too.
Alex, do you think this was more about not having Cahill and Kusanen, or has the dynasty finally reached its natural end?
I think that's arguably in professional sports, the best part about dynasties is that at some point they have to end. Boston, they had a great run, but I don't think their dynasty is over yet. The big thing that they are missing, obviously Allison Cahill, obviously Tuti Kusanen has been missing as well, 2 significant stars, but Ruth Mata has not taken a snap for this team all season long. And I think that when you look at the ability of the Boston Renegades on offense, the last 5 years that they've had 3 great running backs. Katie Falkowski cannot do it herself. She has some opportunities behind her for some depth pieces, but against these top teams, your St. Louis's, your Pittsburghs, we'll see them again when they play DC. This is a team now where the gap between Boston and the rest of the WFA has gotten closer than ever, where the question has always been who's not going to beat the Boston Renegades, it's who's going to be close. Well, now no longer the question is who's going to be close. Someone beat them, and someone beat them pretty securely. Watching that game, you looked at how St. Louis they led throughout much of this contest. Boston was able to punch, but St. Louis punched back just the same. The St. Louis Slam core that has played Boston for many, many years now, since you and I started covering the WFA together in 2019, this St. Louis team added Jada Humphrey, and that's about it. The rest of this team has been the same. They've grown together. They've gotten stronger together. And finally, St. Louis was able to beat them. It wasn't just the flash in the pan where they led at halftime in 2022. It wasn't a great first quarter in Canton, Ohio in 2023. It was a full 60 minutes of quality play for St. Louis that Boston didn't have full health enough to be able to contend with. It proves, this game does, that Boston is vulnerable if they are not healthy. And Pittsburgh looks at that and licks their chops a little bit because they're looking for revenge. DC licks their chops. They're looking for the revenge for the first time against Boston in quite some time. all of a sudden the National Conference looks up at the Boston Renegades and say, the air up there is not so far away. But the big question, of course, Boston. This is their first time losing in years. How does this Boston Renegade team respond? John Johnson, as we know, is one of the nicest guys you could possibly find. I have not been to a practice under John Johnson, but I imagine when they start to lose, it would get a little fiery and a little fired up. I have no doubt that this Boston Renegade team can put the Jets on for the rest of the season to be able to regain that form that we're used to seeing. But they need help, and they need help quick. They need Cahill back. They need Mata back. They need to be able to be the Boston Renegades of old, because otherwise, St. Louis now, Jamie Gall, Jada Humphrey, McMahon has been a great piece that was acquired last season, but now they've added additional pieces in their attacking game. Their defense has always been stellar, but now you have an offense that can go toe-to-toe with Boston, and they know that. Can they do it on a neutral site? We'll find out. But you've beaten them, and just that one win alone is enough for St. Louis to believe that come Boston in July, that this game is going to be one of the best in WFA history.
And in the second game of the week, the New York Wolves went into Pittsburgh with hopes of getting above 500 on the season. The undefeated Passion had other plans and now hold the best record in the National Conference after beating the Wolves 51-6. Alex, in their last two games, New York has been outscored 92-6. Pittsburgh has outscored their opponents 141-42. Can the Wolves salvage this season?
I think that we talked about New York as looking a team that was looking to make a statement coming into the season. And when they played against Detroit, watching that game against Detroit, there was nothing about the New York Wolves that had me concerned. Ayala was great. You know, when Karen Mulligan was able to make plays as well. This is a New York team that, to me, when I saw their game against Detroit, it was a team that did not appear to be missing any skips. You know, normally you talk about that championship layoff. Well, I didn't really see it out of New York in that first game. But then you get that result against Baltimore. You get that result here against Pittsburgh. I said last week that New York needed a meaningful game against Pittsburgh to have a good chance here in the Massey's. They just didn't show up. And I think that's the big thing, where you knew Pittsburgh was going to have a good defense. You know that they were going to have a good offense because Pittsburgh is healthier, significantly so, than they were a season ago, where you needed to be able to have a significant result here to keep your Hyde alive in the Massey ratings. New York didn't do that. Your three teams in the National Conference that you knew were going to be essentially locks coming into the season this year: Boston, Pittsburgh, DC. There was one team on the outside looking in where you could have had the argument, what does Alabama have? We know right now they don't have a lot. And it's unfortunate for Alabama after reaching a conference title game a year ago. But it was open for New York. But right now, with two games played following their game against Detroit, this is a team that doesn't have anything in the tank. They don't appear to. Because if they did, you know, you'd start picking up those results that you had last season. You picked up meaningful results. You beat Baltimore on a second-half surge. You beat OKC, a very good OKC team at Division II. And my question with New York, Brian, rest of the season, where's the result going to come from? You know, you look at their next game, they're on bye this week, then they're at Boston, home to DC, at Baltimore. You lost to Baltimore already at home. You didn't score a point against them at home. There better be some second half adjustments here, not just in the game, but in the season, to be able to save what they have in that contest. But then against Boston, Boston's looking at that film that they see, and they see no opposition. We talked about the health and the full-strength nature of Boston, but I don't think have a single concern about the New York Wolves right now. They're an afterthought to Boston as it stands right now. Then you look at D.C. You know, D.C. is a team that we've looked for the Divas to find their footing. They've started to find their footing again. And so I look at the New York Wolves, I look at the schedule that they have. The pieces are all the same. The offense doesn't seem to have any problems. The defense doesn't seem to have any problems. They just aren't getting the results. And that's, unfortunately, in a 6-game season for New York, when you're not getting the results that you need, your season's over. And that's tough for a New York team that was a champion. Yes, a champion last season. But they've made the step up. And right now, through 3 games, they haven't proven that they're ready to go.
It's another week, and Lois Cook still hasn't quite figured out what's going on in the football landscape. Hopefully, she has a little more insight for us this week in her segment, Low on the Go.
Hey, girl! Hey, hey, hi. Oh, hey. Good to see you again. Same to you. We were talking the other day. I think you ready to get on the field? No. I think you dropped these when we were.
I didn't drop anything. Are you ready to get off the field?
No,
Ready to
no.
go?
No, cause see, I fell. I tripped over
You didn't
these. I
trip
was
over
like,
anything.
I was doing the matrix, and these are
The matrix onto the field?
these are yours.
No, they're not.
No, these are yours.
They are definitely not.
They're not mine. They're yours.
They are
What's
yours.
going on here?
Hi.
Oh, so
You
we
here for trial? She is.
No.
She
We
is.
go way
She was
back.
just
in
telling
the
me
day.
about it.
Flo. Your name is Flo. Let's go. 5
No.
minutes. Let's go.
5 minutes, just like she said.
Hi.
Hey. How's it going?
Good, I guess. Football practice?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it's a lot of fun. You'll get used to it eventually.
Oh no. I'm just here on a work assignment. I just came to drop these off actually. So
Drop them off. You're not
I
gonna play.
think I'm gonna play, but I played a long time ago. But I
Okay.
think-
Well, I mean, if you wanted to hear a little bit of tea, make you, want to play a little longer.
You got the tea?
I always have the tea.
Oh. Okay. Well. Oh, you got tea too.
Yes.
I like a good Earl Grey sometimes.
Oh, awesome. Well, let me tell you. So, my name is Sandy, and for some reason they call me Tiny. Not exactly sure why.
They call you Tiny.
Exactly. That's what I said.
Wow.
So weird. Hey, girl. How's it going? Okay. Yeah, they call her Trigger J. She has an attitude problem. I don't really care for her, but I have to be nice to her since she's my teammate. Whatever. Yeah. Then there's this one girl, D Smooth. She is fun.
Oh yeah.
Yes, that one.
Oh my. Wow.
Yes. Hey, D. Yes. The coach. You know what's crazy about the coach? She's awesome when she's not on the field. When she's on the field, she is a real B word, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, so I think everybody's pretty confused. Like I'm really not here.
Oh, no. You're going to play.
Oh no. I just came because I fell on these things.
No.
I was like,
Did you not hear me? I said you're going to play.
no,
You're going to play football.
What's
this
going on here?
We're just talking.
Hey. On the field.
We just
Now.
Oh, okay. See what I mean? Okay. So football is your thing now, right?
No. It was meant for a long time ago.
Okay. So football is your thing, right? I'm not asking them. Oh. Just kidding. I'm not kidding though. Want some tea?
After this short break, we will look at the Week 5 matchups. Now let's look at the Week 5 matchups. In a condensed week for the Memorial Holiday weekend, all but 3 Pro Division teams are on a bye. The 0-3 Alabama Fire are on the road looking for their first win of the season when they travel to play the 3-0 Atlanta Rage of Division II. These teams met previously this season with Atlanta winning 21-6. And in the only game of the week, the 3-0 Pittsburgh Passion travel to Florida to take on the 0-3 Tampa Bay Inferno. Last season, these teams met in Week 2 with the Passion coming out on top 21-6. Alex, with 141 points scored this season, Pittsburgh trails only the Minnesota Vixen in how many points they're putting up on the board. Tampa, however, is scoring some of the fewest at 7 per game while allowing an average of 33. Is Pittsburgh becoming the next National Conference powerhouse?
Well, and I think that's an interesting question to make because Pittsburgh, I think, would qualify themselves as a National Conference powerhouse just because of how dominant they have been over the years and how, aside from Boston, they've been the team to beat. I think that's the big question that you have to look at for Pittsburgh. You know, we mentioned last season, and you look at that 21-6 scoreline between these two teams a year ago. That was a Pittsburgh team that was injury-riddled. This year, they're full health. And I think that when you look at Pittsburgh, it's a team that, now that they are full health, now that they have the strength that they needed to have a season ago, this is a dominant team. Where you look at that middle of July contest for a National Conference Championship that's probably going to be Pittsburgh and Boston, you think that Pittsburgh's chances in this game are better because they are full strength, they are full depth. You look at, Pittsburgh, for me, the big thing that they need to come out of this week with, and they need to come out of this game against Tampa with, they need to come out of it with health. My concern would that be, it's like when we see professional sports leagues go to Las Vegas, and then teams perform poorly in Las Vegas because of that. Pittsburgh, as we know, is northern climate. You're going down to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is beautiful, especially this time of the year. There might be a little bit of that humidity, but it's an opportunity to catch out the beach, head to St. Pete, see the best of the Gulf of Mexico side of Florida that Florida has to offer. And so while it's a little bit of a vacation trip being over a holiday weekend, this is a Pittsburgh team that needs to come back healthy, because you look at what Pittsburgh has the rest of the schedule, where you're going to take on teams that are going to have significant impacts for the rest of your season. The big one, of course, is Boston. You have a bye week after this week, and you don't want to overlook Tampa here, because Tampa, we know, Tampa has pedigree. We'll talk about them in a minute. But you look at what's coming up in terms of Pittsburgh. They need to be able to stay healthy out of this game, because you have Boston coming up. You have a game against Columbus in Division II that you should be able to beat. And so Pittsburgh needs to stay healthy. Marcelina Chavez, her second year as a full-time quarterback, replacing Alyssa George due to injury last year, has really stepped up and thrived in that role. The ground game has been great beyond Pierce, and there's been a depth of wide receiver talent that Pittsburgh hasn't really had in the past. Rebecca Ergood went down in the opening week game that they played against Alabama, and rather than losing a significant piece, they've had players step up in her stead. And that's what I've liked about Pittsburgh, where this is a pretty good team that you feel good about going into any matchup the rest of the way. Tampa Bay as well, you got to give credit to Tampa. They've done a great job scheduling the opponents that they've played, where they're playing tough competition. They're playing West Palm Beach. They were Division III champions a year ago, Division II this year, but right now their Massey rating is better than 8 WFA pro teams. It's a West Palm Beach team that arguably shouldn't have been Division III a year ago, but was based on their city size. Now they're dominant at Division II and probably have the outside looking in track to be a pro team next year, where this is a game where you have an opportunity to make a statement. Like New York did last week against Pittsburgh, Tampa has the opportunity to make a statement, because for the outside teams that are looking into that playoff spot, looking at that 4 seed, and maybe you don't want to go and play Boston because Boston's really good, specifically at home, but you look at that on the outside going in and say, hey, let's go play a playoff game, right? This is an opportunity for Tampa Bay to make a statement where they can say, you know what, we haven't had wins, we've averaged 7 points a game. This is an opportunity for us to say, well, maybe the Tampa Bay Inferno aren't going anywhere soon quite yet. Candace Brady, Tampa's ground game was a strength. They've started to pass more. And you have to give credit for Tampa to making the adjustment at the WFA Pro level, but they need to be able to do more. The big thing with Tampa, they have to keep the Pittsburgh defense on the field. It's a strong defense, but in the Tampa Bay heat and humidity, it's a defense that can get weared out quickly. And so when I look at Tampa, they have to dominate the ground game. They have to dominate time of possession to be able to get this game won. But the big thing is I don't know that they have enough in the tank. I expect Pittsburgh to win. It's just, how does Tampa show up on Saturday?
And we'll be right back. Every year, the WFA uses the Massey rating system to help seed the playoff positions. This is done because many teams, due to their geographical locations, cannot necessarily play teams only in their division and have to play teams that are in a lower division. Massey then uses a complicated math formula that looks at your strength of schedule, your opponent's strength of schedule, and then points allowed, points scored, and points differential. This means that a team with a loss like the Boston Renegades can still be ranked higher than an undefeated team like the Pittsburgh Passion. This is because Boston is set to play all 6 of their games versus Pro Division teams, whereas the Passion have a game versus a Division II team. Alex, we've talked about playoff positioning on this program quite a bit today. And every year we hear of teams that have gone undefeated, not making the playoffs, and curious as to why they haven't gotten there. What is your thought on the Massey system?
Well, I think that the Massey system exists out of necessity. Its comparison in college hockey at the Division I level and the Division III level too, for that matter, the pairwise requires teams to be able to play tough competition because, logistically speaking, it's tough to be able to go play teams that are at your same level because of resources, because of financial reasons, because of time constraints. You're not going to go out and play tackle football games every other week, and not even every other week, every other day, like we see at the WNBA, like we see at the PWHL level, because it's just not sustainable physically, financially, social, emotionally, whatever you want to call it. So it's a system that exists. You mentioned teams that are frustrated by the results of it. I think about on the hockey side, Arizona State, the Sun Devils, as a NCAA independent, were as frustrated that they did not make the NCAA men's ice hockey tournament this year because their pairwise rating was so low. They haven't played anybody. And so that's where it's important for teams to be able to put themselves in a spot where they can schedule good teams. Minnesota was frustrated by the first version of their schedule. They made some moves happen so they could play a tougher schedule to help their Massey ratings. Granted, Minnesota's always played a tough schedule, but that's what teams need to do. Tampa Bay, we just talked about Tampa Bay. It's a team in the Southeast region that needs growth and needs to be able to play games against meaningful opponents. They could go play a Carolina team. They could go play Jacksonville, Miami, teams in the state at a lower division. They could go play Orlando, a historic powerhouse at Division III, but it wouldn't have the same impact. So they have to go out and schedule those teams. The big thing to make sure that we don't have to go to a Massey rating type system, resources, right? It's important to support women's sports because when women's sports is supported, it can grow. You've seen it at PWHL. We've seen it now in the WNBA with this great influx of talent from the collegiate ranks. You need to be able to support women's sports for them to grow. Everything else has grown except for women's tackle football. And it's time for women's tackle football to be able to step up on the same plane as the WNBA, as the PWHL, as women's professional soccer in the United States and in Europe. It is time to support women's professional football as with other women's professional sports. Because guess what? This is pretty darn good football. And if you're not watching the WFA, you're missing out. And the support needs to start being there because this is a good product. The stories are great, and it's important to be able to watch this because women's sports is excellent.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. Speaking of stories, if you had story ideas or clips, please don't forget to send them to us at roadtocantonshow@gmail.com. Have a great Memorial weekend, and don't forget to check back because we will be only 3 weeks away from the playoffs next weekend. For Lois Cook and Alex Wested, I'm Brian Sweeney, and we'll see you next week on the Road to Canton.
Thank you for watching the preceding presentation from the Women's Football Alliance.